NBA is investigating racist remarks allegedly made by LA Clippers owner Donald Sterling in a phone call with his girlfriend. It's an audio tape obtained by TMZ. In that conversation, the man believed to be Sterling takes issue with his girlfriend posting a picture of herself with Magic Johnson and posting it on Instagram saying, quote, "It bothers me a lot that you want to broadcast that you're associating with black people. Do you have to?" He goes on to say, "You can sleep with them, you can bring them in, you can do whatever you want. The little I ask is you not to promote it and not to bring them to my games." The NBA has issued this statement. We're in the process of conducting a full investigation into the audio recording obtained by TMZ. The remarks heard on the recordings are disturbing and offensive, but at this time we have no further information. Wow. Shaq, I'll give you the first crack at this.
You know, it's one thing to say something that's controversial, but it's another thing to say something that's very repugnant. The question is now, should this guy continue being an owner? That's the question. Should this guy continue being an owner? You know, everyone has their thoughts. You know, everyone has their opinions. But you know, when your opinions and your thoughts become public knowledge, the question is now what? And then another question is will his team shut down on him? Will his team take these remarks personally and say, you know what, we don't want to play for a guy like this? And, I mean, so, unfortunate situation, but I think the league needs to take a very long, hard look on whether this guy should continue being an owner or not.
You can read these statements over and over. You can read the story over and over, and you still cannot believe what you're reading.
Well, first of all, you can believe it, because this has happened before. He settled a lawsuit years ago. Obviously he owns a lot of land and things also, and he settled a lawsuit that said he was discriminating against blacks and Hispanics. So this is habitual. This is the first test of Adam Silver. He's got to suspend him right now. First of all, they got to prove his voice on the tape. But this is the first big test from Adam Silver. You can't have this guy making statements like that. He has to suspend him and fine him immediately. He has to be suspended. You know, Ernie, and the problem I have with it, if somebody want to be racist, that's all right. That's their thing. But when you're in a position of power and you can take jobs and economic opportunity from people, that's what crosses the line. But we cannot have an NBA owner discriminating against a league we're a black league, Ernie. We are a black league. I don't know the number, but I'd probably say 80% of our players are black.
How do you take this as a player?
Well,
that's a different animal there.
Yeah, I just think, firstly, that, racism is like a refuge for ignorance. And I think there's two things that we could take from it. And the first, I would say, is that, he's taking his primitive thought process and saying that, hey, I could work with you, or you could work for me, but I can't be associated with you. And, or I could, obviously, you could be my girlfriend, obviously, because she's
black and
Mexican as well. So it's just a refuge for ignorance. I think it's more, for me, it's a teaching tool for the new generation. Because the new generation of players, new generation of I call it new educated, new wealth African Americans could take this as an educational standpoint and say, how do you deal with people like this who will still have this kind of Jim Crow thought process? And that's really where it has to go. But yes, he has to be suspended. And Magic Johnson came out and tweeted, said he'd never go to another Clipper game. I can totally understand that. And I can understand people who wouldn't support the Clippers at this point. Because he is the voice, and he's taken the ownership of a team a little bit too serious.
And I got to say this.
Ownership.
Ernie, let me say this first of all. I think it's unfair. This is a Donald Sterling thing. This is not a Clipper thing. We have to separate the two because, listen, Doc Rivers, Blake, Chris Paul, that's their team. He owns the team, but we're not thinking about who owns the team as a player. We don't care who owns the team.
But aren't you in this situation? So look at the guy who's signing our checks.
Yes.
Look what he has to say, and look how he feels about us. And that goes from Doc Rivers to
and I understand that, but the team, but the team can't say we're gonna shut down because our owner's a jackass.
I think the one thing,
it's not fair to the players.
I think the one thing as a player, and this is why I'm saying a teaching tool is, you're a professional, and you have a craft that you had God-given, that you worked for. and you continue to do that craft to the best of your ability and knowledge. But when it comes time to re-sign with a team, that might be a team that you have second thoughts about playing with because of the type of ownership.
Or if you're a player in the league thinking about free agency.
Yeah, because my whole thing is I am a professional, and I've put myself in this position, not Donald Sterling. So I have to perform to the greatest of my abilities. I have to coach at the greatest of my abilities. Now that I know what's on the other side of the fence, I know what to deal with in a later time.
Word is the Clippers have had a team meeting. No word on what exactly the result of that is. But they play tomorrow at Golden State. Do you make a message as a member of that Clipper team, or what is the reaction? What happens when you take the floor the next day?
You know, you still have to go out and, you know, do your job. You know, Donald Sterling is a one man, and I agree with Chuck, he owns the team, but, you know, there's a lot more at stake. You know, fans going to be watching the game. You have a legitimate chance of winning a championship, and, you know, sometimes you have to go through trials and tribulations to get to where you want to go. And, you know, as a player, they should not let this discourage them or stop them from trying to win a championship.
And Ernie, listen, it's your team is your team. You're not worried about who owns it. But this is the first test for Adam Silver. He has to suspend this guy. He got to, because like I said, this is habitual. He's already had the lawsuit for discrimination that he settled. So clearly he was doing something wrong. But this is the first big test of Adam Silver. And he's got to suspend this guy. He has to suspend this guy.
Yeah, without question.
The NBA's investigation into this incident, into this reporting,
it needs to be quick.
continues, and it has to be accurate.
Yes.
And so, but I mean, if it's true and if it's him, there's no place in the league for Donald Sterling in my mind.
I agree with you.